Now we will take a look at the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Hang on just a second. Sal, there you are. I actually can see your face. Usually I only see the top of your head. It's very nice. Haribol, everyone. Please accept my humble obeisances. Namo Siddheshvar Paramahamsa Namine Gaura Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prastayate. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya De Satarine Vanchakalpa Tribhyascha Kripasindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So, we're looking at chapter 9 in the ANTYA LILA. This is the final book of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's called The Deliverance of Gopinath Patanayaka. All glories to the Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the most merciful incarnation of the Lord. All glories to Lord Nityananda, whose heart is always filled with compassion. All glories to Advaita Acharya, who is so merciful. All glories to all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who are always overwhelmed with transcendental bliss. The 9th chapter is summarized as follows. Gopinath Patanayaka, the son of Bhavananda Roy and the brother of Ramananda Roy, was engaged in the service of the government. However, he misappropriated some funds from the treasury, which is kind of a nice way of saying he went out and spent money he shouldn't have. It's not clear exactly what he spent it on, but it's hinted that it was on some nonsense. Therefore, the eldest son of King Prataparudra, Bhadajana, ordered that he be punished by being put to death. And thus, Gopinath Patanayaka was raised on the Kanga to be killed. Now, the Kanga is not a kind of drum. No matter what you may think, the Kanga was a device for killing somebody, a condemned prisoner, someone who committed some crime. And in those days in India, you could be condemned to death for just about anything. The Kanga consisted of a raised platform. In my mind, I'm seeing something like the platform where you would hang people. You know, you have to climb up the stairs onto this platform where you would have the nooses for hanging people. But instead of having nooses, the condemned person was made to stand on the edge of the platform and then pushed over the platform where there was like 100 stationary upright swords. Yeah. Not fun. The condemned man would be pushed down onto the swords, and in this way, he would die. For some reason, Gopinath Patanayaka had been condemned to death and therefore had been raised up on the Kanga. Now, it wasn't like there was no... So the king, said, okay, I'm missing like $200,000. What happened to it? And Gopinath said, well, I don't have it, but I will sell anything, and I will raise the money to pay you back as quickly as possible. And so he had about 4 prize-winning horses that were very, very valuable, and he brought those before the king and said, I will sell you these for 100,000, and I will make up the rest over as much time as you will give me to make up the rest of the money that I owe you. Well, the king called his elder son, who was familiar with horses, to get some idea of the value of the horses. And for some reason, this prince had it in for Gopinath. He didn't like him or something, because he looked at these $100,000 horses and he said, well, I don't know, I might give you maybe $25,000 for them. Well, Gopinath got very upset and, of course, afraid, and started cursing and calling the prince all kinds of names, and so the prince condemned him to death. Once this happened, many devotees, including Swarup Damodar, came to Lord Chaitanya, begging for him to intervene. The Lord, however, said, hey, look, I'm just a poor sannyas. What can I do? The king condemned him to death. He's going to die. If you really want to save him, what you really ought to be doing is praying. All of you should be praying together at the lotus feet of Lord Jagannath. Lord Jagannath is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He possesses all potencies, and therefore he is able to freely act however he likes. He can do or undo anything, whether the king said it or not. So this really upset Lord Chaitanya, because he really felt like, as a sannyas, it wasn't his position to be going and intervening in political affairs and government affairs and so forth. But in the meantime, some of the king's servants told him of the impending execution of Sir Gopinath. And they pointed out that if your minister, Gopinath, is killed, then you lose twice. You lose the money, he'll never be able to pay it back, and you lose one of your best servants. Well, it turns out that the king apparently knew nothing of the prince's plot to condemn Gopinath, and ordered Gopinath's immediate release upon his promise to repay the missing money. It seems that Gopinath Patanayaka had been chanting the holy name of Sri Krishna incessantly since his arrest, and praying for the Lord's causeless mercy. And so, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, he was delivered. And moreover, he was actually promoted to a higher post and made twice as much money. The king did that so that he could pay it back more quickly. By the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one can certainly become spiritually advanced. Indeed, no one can estimate the results of his mercy. Gopinath Patanayaka achieved the result of kingly opulence due to but a glimpse of the Lord's mercy. Therefore, no one can calculate the full value of the Lord's mercy. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami says, one can achieve the highest perfection in life simply by meditating upon the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Generally, people are concerned with the four so-called principles of religion, namely religiosity, material opulence, sense gratification, and/or liberation. However, the Srimad Bhagavatam indicates that success in these four kinds of material and spiritual gain are not the true results of actual devotional service. The true result of devotional service is the actual development of one's dormant love for Krishna in every circumstance. By the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, this Gopinath Patanayaka could understand that the material benefits he had achieved, even with his stolen money, were not the ultimate result of meditating upon the Lord's lotus feet. The true result comes when one is detached from material opulence. Therefore, Gopinath Patanayaka prayed to the Lord for such detachment. Again, Bhaktivedanta says, one should be completely free from all material desires. One should serve Krishna, not because they want something, but simply to please Krishna. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. When people become interested in their own sense gratification, bhukti, mukti, siddhi, kami, some of them may desire to enjoy the material world to its fullest extent. Some of them desire to be liberated and merge into the existence of Brahman effulgence. Others want to perform magic and have mystic powers, and thus become incarnations of God. These guys are still there in India. This one guy, Satya Sai Baba, used to manufacture stuff out of nothing, jewels and stuff that he would give to his disciples, and they were all convinced that he was God. And he's not alone. There are many like that. Anyway, these are all against the principles of devotional service. One must be free, completely free of all material desires. The desire of the impersonalist to merge into the Brahman effulgence is also a material desire, because such an impersonalist simply wants to gratify his senses by merging into that existence of Krishna. Krishna's light instead of Krishna's person, serving his lotus feet. Even if such a person does merge into the Brahman, he will fall down again into material existence because he has no one to serve. He has no one to relate to except this Brahman, that's this ocean. It's like being in the middle of the ocean with no place to go, nothing to do. There are many materialistic persons, ACBS goes on, who become preachers, gurus, so-called religionists, or philosophers, only for the sake of maintaining a high standard of living and sense gratification for themselves and for their families. Sometimes they adopt the dress of a sannyasi, or sometimes they adopt the dress of a preacher. a preacher who holds a service in the name of God and will tell you that you're going to be going to hell if you don't do what I say. Yeah, we have those here too. They train some of their family members as lawyers, and they continually seek help from a high court or another to acquire riches on the plea of maintaining religious temples. Although such persons may call themselves preachers, they may even live in Vrindavan or Navadvip, and they may print many religious books. Nevertheless, it is all for the same purpose, and that purpose is to earn a living to maintain their wives and children and mistresses and so forth. They may also professionally recite the Srimad Bhagavatam or other scriptures. They may worship the deity in the temple, and they, of course, will want to initiate disciples, making a show of devotional paraphernalia. They may also collect money from the public and use it to cure the disease of some family member or some close relative. Sometimes they become Babajis, or they collect money on the plea of worshiping the poor, whom they call Daridra Narayana, or for social and political upliftment. And thus, they spread a network of business schemes to collect money for sense gratification by cheating people in general who have no knowledge of pure devotional service. I've known people like that. I've seen people like that. I'm sure you have too. Such cheaters, these cheaters, cannot understand that simply by offering devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can be elevated to a position of eternal divine servitude to the Lord, which is much greater than even the position of Brahma and other demigods. Unfortunately, these fools have no understanding of perpetual pleasure, what to speak of real devotional service. In chapter 10, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepts prasad from his many devotees. Before the Ratha Yatra ceremony, all the devotees from Bengal started for Jagannath Puri, as usual. Raghava Pandit brought with him various kinds of foodstuffs for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This food had been cooked by his sister, whose name was Damayanti, and the stock that she cooked it in was generally known as Raghavera Jali. Makaradava Kara, who was an inhabitant of Panihati, who accompanied Raghava Pandit, was the secretary in charge of accounting for Raghavera Jali. The bags of food carried by Raghava Pandit. So he was in charge of counting the bags of food that was being carried by Raghava Pandit. The day when all the devotees arrived at Jagannath Puri, Lord Govinda was enjoying sporting pastimes in the water of Narendra Sarovara. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also enjoyed the ceremony in the water with his devotees. So in other words, it was the day of celebration of the water pastimes of Narendra Sarovara. And Lord Chaitanya was also enjoying some of these water ceremonies with his devotees. As previously mentioned, Lord Chaitanya performed the cleansing ceremony at Gundicha and chanted the famous verse, Jagamohana Parimunda Yao. Jagamohana Parimunda Yao. After the kirtan had ended, he distributed prasad to all the devotees and then took some himself. He lay down at the door of Gambhira to take his rest. Somehow or other, his servant Govinda came by and massaged his feet. However, Govinda could not go out that day, and therefore he was unable to taste prasad. From the character of Govinda, it is to be learned that we may sometimes commit offenses in the service of the Lord, but we cannot commit offense for our own sense gratification. We'll get into that in a few minutes. Govinda, the personal servant of Lord Chaitanya, induced the Lord to eat all the food delivered by the devotees of Bengal for his service. All the Vaishnavas used to invite Lord Chaitanya into their homes. The Lord accepted the invitation of Chaitanya Das, the son of Shivananda Sen, and ate rice and yogurt there. The next day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went with his personal devotees to see Lord Jagannath. When Lord Jagannath arose early in the morning, The next day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went with his personal devotees to see Lord Jagannath when Lord Jagannath arose early in the morning. After seeing Lord Jagannath, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began his all-encompassing Sankirtan. He formed 7 different groups, each with mridanga and different instruments, and each with a different leader, and they all began to chant. The congregational chanting made tumultuous roars that filled the sky. All the inhabitants of Jagannath Puri came to see this amazing kirtan. All 7 groups began chanting and beating their drums in the 7 different directions. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began dancing in the center of all of it with great ecstatic love. Swarup Damodar sang, "Let my head fall at the feet of Lord Jagannath in the kirtan hall known as Jagamohan." And simply because of this line, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing in greatly ecstatic love. People all around him floated on the waters of his tears. Raising his 2 arms, the Lord said, "Chant! Chant!" Floating in transcendental bliss, the people responded by chanting the holy name of Hari, 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 Hari. All the hair on his body constantly stood up on end like thorns of a simula tree. And sometimes his body was swollen, and sometimes it looked lean and thin. His transcendental bliss increased at every moment, and therefore even by mid-afternoon the dancing had not ended. The ocean of transcendental bliss overflowed, and everyone present forgot his body. They forgot their mind. They forgot their home. They forgot everything except Krishna. Finally, Lord Nityananda brought the kirtan to an end. And when there was no longer a tumultuous roaring sound, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned to consciousness. He had fainted many times during this. He would faint and appear to be dead. And then all of a sudden he would get up again and start chanting again. And then he would lose consciousness again. And then he would get up and start chanting again. When Nityananda informed the Lord of the fatigue of the chanters and dancers, Lord Chaitanya took prasad with all of them and then asked them to return to their dwellings and take rest. It was a standard I'm going to tell you the story of Govinda and Lord Chaitanya now. It's a wonderful story that I had heard a couple of times before. But I'm going to share this with you right out of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It was a steady, long-standing rule that Lord Chaitanya would lie down to rest after lunch, and Govinda would come to massage his legs. When Govinda would honor the remnants, then Govinda would honor the remnants of whatever food was left by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This time, however, when the Lord lay down, he occupied the entire doorway. Govinda could not enter the room without stepping over Lord Chaitanya. And this was considered very offensive. And therefore, he requested the Lord, "My dear Lord, kindly turn upon one side. Let me pass to enter the room." However, the Lord replied, "I don't have the strength to move my body." Govinda repeatedly requested, "But my dear Lord, I want to massage your legs." But the Lord said, "Do it or don't do it. It depends upon your mind." Finally, out of desperation, Govinda spread the Lord's chadar over the Lord's body. So there was no bare legs or anything, or bare anything. Spread it all over his body. And this way he entered the room by crossing over his resting body. As Govinda stroked his body, the Lord slept very nicely for about an hour and 45 minutes. Then his sleep broke. "Why didn't you go and take your meal after I fell asleep?" the Lord asked. "Well, my dear Lord, you are lying down. You are blocking the door. So there was no place I could go." The Lord said, "Well, how did you enter the room in the first place? Why don't you go out and take your lunch the same way you came in?" "Oh, my Lord, I could not. I don't mind committing hundreds or thousands of offenses for the service, for your service or serving the Lord. Oh, but I greatly fear committing even a glimpse of an offense for my own self." These are some of the finer points of etiquette in devotional service. Only one who has received the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can actually come to understand such principles. So, it was okay with Govinda to step over the Lord's sleeping body, in order to engage in his service, to give him the massage while he slept, to relax him. But he simply kept massaging even after the Lord fell asleep. Even though he was hungry, he could not take prasad because he did not want to step over the Lord's body to simply go and get some food for himself. This is the consciousness. This is the consciousness. This is the amazing consciousness of a real devotee. We should all try to come to have that consciousness, not to just do something, just because we heard somebody did it. Imitation is not what bhakti is all about. It needs to come from your heart. You don't, if you're in a similar situation, you don't make some offensive movement or say something offensive simply because you heard stories of someone else doing that. You do it because it is the correct thing to do in your heart of hearts, and you know that out of service to the Lord. A.C. Bhaktivedanta says, karmis, or fruit of workers, cannot understand the finer conclusions of devotional service because they accept only its ritualistic value. But they do not understand how devotional service satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These karmis view the formalities as a means of advancing in their religiosity, or in their economic development, or their sense gratification or liberation. Although these are only material results of following so-called religious principles, these karmis consider them to be everything. In other words, you just do it, you imitate, you make rituals. I don't know if, I can't, probably most of you grew up going to Catholic church, or many of you grew up going to a Catholic church. And my wife took me to a couple of Catholic services, which I hadn't been to in many, many years. And what really stuck with me more than anything else in that whole experience of going to Mass was the fact that the fathers would do their ritual, they would do their this and their that, and they would hold up the Bible and they would do that, and they had no idea what they were doing, why they were doing it, what it was for, what it was about, or anything. It was so obvious. They had no idea what was going on. They just knew that they had to hold it up. They knew that they had to do this. They knew that they had to do that. That's the way the ritual went. They had no idea of the meaning behind it. And that was sad. These ritualistic activities are called karma. And it is karmis who engage in karma. They adopt devotional service very loosely or by imitation. And those who therefore remain on this platform of material activities are called prakrita sahajas. They cannot understand how pure devotional service is rendered in paternal or conjugal love. For this to be understood, for this can be only understood by the special mercy that is bestowed by the Lord Himself, by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, upon pure devotees. And so, having instructed His devotees in various ways, for 6 years, Sri Chaitanya was ready to fully immerse himself in this sweet, concentrated love of God. In the next chapters with ANTYA LILA, we'll be getting into the ecstasy of Lord Chaitanya. Many, many descriptions of His ecstatic love and how it was manifest. Krishnadas Kaviraj says, one who hears about the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with faith and love will certainly attain ecstatic love for the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu without fail. The narrations of Lord Chaitanya's activities are like nectar for the ear and for the heart. Indeed, they satisfy both the ears and the mind and the heart. One who tastes the nectar of these activities is certainly very fortunate. Anyone who tastes the nectar of these activities is certainly very fortunate. You're very fortunate. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, and always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Haribol Namaste. Namo Siddheshvar Paramam Sadamine. Gaura Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prasthayate. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine. Nirvi Sesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine. Vanchakal Patribhyas Cha Kripasindubhya Eva Cha. Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevya Namo Namaha. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And so, we've discussed these chapters 9 and 10 of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I hope you feel the mercy of the Lord upon you. Are there any questions or comments? Sal?
Yeah, I'm curious about the prasadam that takes a year doesn't spoil. So how is that?
I'm sorry.
On chapter 10. On chapter 10.
Yes.
I read that. It takes a year.
No.
It takes a year. I read that.
You misread it.
Some of the prasadam. Some of the prasadam.
Well, if you have chipped rice or something like that, that could last for a year. You know. But, and if I did not read, I just read chapter 10. I didn't read anything about prasadam taking a year before they were able to consume it. I mean, there's more prasadam every day. And it also talks about Raghunath Bhatta, who went to the places where even the cows wouldn't eat the prasadam because it was spoiled already, and he would eat that. So, you know, I think that you're misreading something. I did not see that in chapter 10. But hey, anything's possible by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So I don't know, but I can say that I did not see that upon reading it. I just read it over the last 2 hours, so I did not see that. You know, I
just read that too, so I have this book.
I have it online. But in any case, I don't know how, you know, can you read it? Can you read me the verse? Do you know where it is?
I don't know where is that now, you know.
Okay, all right. Well, you know, the thing is that they're offering prasadam to Lord Jagannath every day. So the idea that it takes, that the same prasadam is sitting there for a year is very unlikely. Not impossible, but very unlikely. So I would, if I were you, I would go back and read it again, see if you can find it, and if you can send me an email or a message on Messenger where it is, I will look it up, and I will. If I can't explain it, I'll send it to Acharya Das, and he can explain it.
I will do that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, I failed that one miserably. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, before we turn it over back to Narayan Dasi, I'd like to ask Boying, Chaitanya Das, Bala, Narayan Dasi. Sir Boying, can you set up a Zoom conference among all the 4 or 5 of us over this next week, I really need to discuss something with you about what we're doing, because it doesn't seem to be working as well as it could. We're not getting new people, except for the people that come for the kirtan. And where we used to get 500, 600 views, we're now getting 70. So I'd like to have a Zoom meeting with you and discuss what we can do to maybe, make it more. Okay? So maybe you can set that up and let me know by messenger or by email. Okay? Namaste. I've got some ideas, but I'd like to share them with you over a meeting, 1-on-1 or 4-on-4 or whatever. Okay, so let me turn it back over to Narayan Dasi and pass a mic, Kirtan.